solo tonight. So you're just going to be seeing me tonight. The other Justin got caught up at work and I was not able to get in contact with our guest tonight. So it's going to be just me giving you some awesome Dynasty content here for the next hour. And listen, it's going to just be me. So might get a little boring at times, might go places I'm not supposed to go here. But who knows? We're going to just keep going here, giving you some awesome advice. And tonight, as we started last week, we broke down the NFC East, and I told you how I felt about the Cowboys. Um, this week we're gonna go to the other side of the. We're gonna go to there, so we're gonna go to the Buffalo Bills, the Miami Dolphins, the New York Jets, and the New England Patriots. That's right. We're going AFC East this week. So here's what we're gonna do. We're gonna just start things off, and we are gonna go with. We're just gonna start things off. We're gonna go with the Buffalo Bills. Now I don't have the slides that my co-host does. We're going to start off with my favorite team in the division. It's the Buffalo Bills. We're just going to kind of break down what they have done this offseason and kind of where I think things stand in terms of the division. So we're going to go off with where I see my team, the Buffalo Bills. I think they have a legitimate shot to, repeat the division as the champions here. They made some solid moves this offseason. The most notable was their first round pick in Kyer Elam. Here's why that pick was important for in both real life football and in terms of fantasy football. Listen, um, as the week started, okay, as the season started, Josh Allen did not look the greatest. All right. We had that sloppy game in, it was a sloppy game in Pittsburgh. And Josh Allen, I think, got hot the first half, and then things just kind of came to a grinding halt. So here's what happened. As I wrote over at Prediction Strike, things took a drastic turn. Josh Allen was having a ho hum season. And we'll take a look at it here. I'm going to use my favorite tool here, which is PFF. I highly recommend doing that if you can. But we're going to I'm going to kind of give you a look here what Josh Allen was doing as we headed into the finishes of last season of 2021. He started off weeks 19 and 18 below. He was a QB2 those first 2 weeks of the season. So, up until that Saints game, and when was that Saints game? It was on Thanksgiving. We're going to just take a look at it. Saints Bills, it was November 25th, and that would have been. Apologies, guys. It's just me tonight. Normally, my co-host is carrying me here with the slides. You have a real appreciation for your co-host when they're not actually with you in the trenches. So if you're listening, Herrera, I appreciate it. A newfound appreciation for my co-host, as we'll say. But listen, here we are, the Bills, and we're gonna keep going here. Josh Allen. Here's where I'm kind of headed with this. Up until that point in the season, the Bills have had a rock solid defense the last couple of years. So I think that selection of Kyer Elam has a drastic impact in terms of fantasy and Josh Allen repeating the third time as the QB1, which I've never actually seen that happen before. So we're going to go here, look at the schedule. We're going to go to the Bills. So we're going to look at the finishes pre and post the Trey White injury, okay? And we'll just kind of, so it was probably around that week 11 mark. So after that Trey White injury, here's what happened. A couple things happened. Prior to that, Josh Allen had 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 weeks outside of the top 12. 6. In 6 weeks, so he was 5-6. He was kind of a spotty starter for you in terms of being a QB1. I mean, he finished the season as the overall QB1. But here's what happened. After that Saints game, we had week 1 finish the QB1 week 14, QB7 week 15, QB3 week 16, QB7 week 17, QB8 week 18. If you're playing on week 18, you're doing things wrong. But back to the original point. The point being that when Trey White got hurt, a lot of the focus went towards Josh Allen. Okay. And here's why that's a problem. Kyer Elam is an excellent addition to that defense. So here's what we're looking at in terms of happening. So I think that the Bills, no matter what, have a legitimate chance to repeat as the AFC East champions, hands down. I just don't see it going any other way. Um, Now it all, but I don't know if Josh Allen's going to repeat as QB1. Reason being is because with Kyer Elam, he presents to them a top flight corner that they took in round one. And if Trey White can get healthy, you're going to have two rock solid corners in that defense, which is going to elevate you. Unless they're getting turnovers, I think that they're going to stick to their solid defense. And Josh Allen might deliver you closer to QB 10 numbers this season because that defense is going to be, I think, good enough to make it so Josh Allen doesn't have to be the hero he was down the stretch of last season. And I know we have Gabriel Davis, we got Stephon Diggs, we got Dawson Knox. And then, which brings me to the next point here, which is a lot of people are looking at between a lot of people are looking at the battle between James Cook and Devin Singletary in terms of running backs they're drafting out of this offense. I'm not entirely sure who the right answer is there because James Cook isn't really built to be the every down back like his brother is in Minnesota. But they did invest round two capital, 31st pick. They traded down into this pick, right? So if I had to guess today in terms of the offense, I'm going to lean James Cook. Stephon Diggs is still going to be the wide receiver one in this offense. So, I think that whoever the running back is in this on this team as we get going here is going to probably be a value. And here's why. As I said before, if I don't think Josh Allen's going to finish as the QB1, something has changed over the last couple of seasons. It's either going to be the rushing touchdowns, it's going to be the rushing yards, and I think we're going to see that filtered out to the running back position. They have made a key effort. They've drafted Zach Moss, they've drafted Devin Singletary, now they're drafting James Cook. They've drafted three running backs. They are telling us that they do not want their quarterback running so much. Okay. So, in terms of who I'm taking, I'm going to lean towards James Cook. I still think Josh Allen's going to be on the field, obviously, and I think he's going to have some rushing upside. But I think they're going to do a lot of dump offs to James Cook. And I think the person that impacts the most in terms of this offense is probably going to be Dawson Knox. I still think Stephon Diggs is going to do Stephon Diggs type things. And Gabriel Davis, as we saw towards the end of last season, is capable of big plays as well. Now, one guy that's going completely unnoticed in this position is Jamison Crowder. And, if you get into the Twitter debates with the other analysts, it's kind of a Jamison Crowder versus Gabriel Davis debate here. And here's why I'm going to lean towards. Here's why I lean towards Gabe Davis, because the acquisition cost is so low. As I mentioned last week, I am very big into getting things at a value. It's kind of just the inner accountant in me. Now, one thing that I love is that in terms of the position he's going to take, is going to be that Cole Beasley role. And if you look at the stats over the last two seasons when he was paired with Josh Allen, you're staring yourself at the last two seasons, 2021 and 2020. We were looking at those are advanced stats. I just want this stats. 112 targets in 2021, and that was considered a down year, might add. He actually had some of the most targets that he had, and many pundits had actually said he had a down year, mainly because he had more targets, the same number of receptions, and way less yards, right? But in terms of what we're looking at, we are looking at 112, 107 to 112 targets at the slot position with Jamison Crowder. So we're starting off the season. We're banking 100 points right here over 17 weeks, we'll say. Okay. Then you got the upside of 900 to 1,000 passing, or receiving yards, and then 4 to 6 touchdowns. That's a drastic upside here. And the cost to get him is so super low, it's insane. So I just feel like we are sleeping on Jamison Crowder because we saw what Gabriel Davis did in that AFC Championship game, which was amazing. I mean, he had himself a game. But let's not forget that they're going to spread the ball around, and it's not always going to be the Gabe Davis show. There's going to be Stephon Diggs, and then you got James Cook and Devin Singletary. And again, I just don't think we're going to see ourselves at the end of the day. I just don't think we're going to see ourselves having Josh Allen finish inside the top 5. I think it's going to be closer to QB5 to QB12 finish, which is still good. I do think we're a little too high on him in terms of that. So I'm probably not going to be getting him in redraft anymore just based on the cost of him, because I've always found that you can get a great value later in the draft. One guy that I said last week was Carson Wentz. I think Carson Wentz is an excellent value with the last pick in your draft if you're doing auctions, stuff like that. Best weapons he's had there. So overall, 1,000-foot view of the Bills offense. Here's the high level view of what we just talked about. I do not believe Josh Allen's going to finish as QB1. I think that they invested that pick in Kaiir Elam. Trey White might not be healthy, but he might not need to be. We saw in the finishes here prior to that that Josh Allen was 5-6 in terms of a top 12 starter. He had 5 weeks or he had 6 weeks inside, so he's 6-5. He had 6 weeks in the top 12, 5 weeks outside of the top 12. Okay. And then in terms of that, I also said that I think because of that, because I think their defense is going to be better with Kaiir Elam and possibly Trey White and all the moves. And then you got Von Miller coming in as well. Didn't even get to that piece. Because of that, I think the running backs are going to be a value in this offense. Now we have to predict which running backs that's going to be, and I have said that that's going to I'm probably putting my money on James Cook. Singletary impressed, but I have not seen Singletary do that consistently over the course of his career. And then I actually have my special guest joining me now. I got Coach Steve from the Fantasy Coaches here. Steve, how's it going?
It's going good, Justin. Thanks for having me tonight. Looking forward to talk some AFC East with you tonight.
No problem. So I was actually just starting us off. Sorry. Appreciate having you. So I actually started the show off with the Bills, and I see the Dolphins logo in the background, so you might kind of like my predictions. Tell me what you think and give me your input on this offense. But the way I started it is I think Josh Allen this season is going to kind of finish below expectations. And I kind of demonstrated this with the PFF stats I have here of where he finished last season. Prior to that Saints game, he was actually 6 times in the top 12, 5 times out of the top 12 prior to that. And then we had these insane finishes down the stretch, right?
Right.
And so I think with that pick of Kaiir Elam and possibly Trey White coming back, I don't think they're going to need Josh Allen to be the stallion that he's been over the last couple of seasons.
Yeah, I kind of agree with you on that, to be honest here. I think they continue to add elite talent to that defense there, so they don't have to rely on Josh Allen all the time. And I think you were mentioning James Cook as well in the run game, is that I think having James Cook there kind of brings a different elements that running game that I think will benefit the team in general. It might not for fantasy, of course, but I think we may see this year the Bills rely more on that run game because they sent such an early pick on it. I know James Cook is more of a pass catching back, but he can run the ball, and when he gets the ball in his hand, he's dangerous as can be. So I agree with you. I think Josh Allen is definitely going to take a small step down. I wouldn't say it's going to be a game changing kind of move in fantasy for him this year, but he may not be relied upon as much. We already saw the rushing kind of come down a little bit over what we saw early on in his career. And again, you lose those veteran presences. I know I'm a big Gabriel Davis fan, but it's the difference between a guy who's, trying to make that next leap there and veteran players who just know how to move the ball down the field, and Cole Beasley and Emmanuel Sanders. And you don't have that as much anymore. So I agree with you. I think Josh Allen definitely does take that step down.
Yeah, like I said, I think we're looking like QB5 to QB10 range. And the reason why that's important is because we're paying QB, top flight prices, where I think we can actually do some analysis as we get closer to the season and kind of pinpoint those breakouts that we typically see from younger guys, which might actually lead us into the next topic, which is going to be your Miami Dolphins. So kind of go through some of the things that they've done this offseason. They signed Melvin Ingram, and then they obviously traded for Tyreek Hill, and then they also signed Sony Michel. They had several moves. They got Chase Edmonds They also got Chase Edmonds, and then on top of that, we can also go to the draft here. But kind of give me your view on what the Dolphins have done this offseason and how you kind of see everything unfolding.
Well, the way I see the offseason going for Miami is they obviously really tried to build around Tua. Obviously this is a make or break season for Tua Tagovailoa right now. They went out there and got him weapons, and that was something that many fantasy experts, even myself, on kind of giving it Tua that crutch. Like, well, you see the weapons he's playing with, you see the offensive line is getting destroyed game in and game out. So, well, they went and got an elite talent like Tyreek Hill. They went and got Cedric Wilson, who's a really good number 3 wide receiver there. They kept Mike Gesicki. You get a run game, I think, that molds well to Mike McDaniel's offense, and Chase Edmonds, Raheem Mostert, and Sony Michel, all who kind of can do a little bit of everything, and which will really work in the offense. And then the offensive line, Terrell Armstead, Connors, they really got great pieces on that offensive line overall. I mean, I think Miami's looking to try to make the playoffs for once in the last once in the last 10 years. Basically, they're trying to make a playoff push right now. I don't think they're the rebuild has gone through the motions. They spent the money this offseason, so they're really trying to take it to that next level there.
Yeah, for sure. I think that they've definitely made the moves they need to make this offseason. Now, unfortunately, I kind of get the vibe from them that they're going to be the off-season champion, with the Tyreek Hill trades. A lot of fan favorite trades, which, I've been there before when the Bills signed Terrell Owens. You think it's going to make a big impact, and it doesn't always go the way you think it's going to go. Do you get that vibe at all, or do you kind of feel like this is a little bit different than a typical um, off-season winner type of deal?
I said, realistically, as a Dolphins fan, I'm hoping everything works out perfect. But and you look at it as in a nutshell, that it really comes down to what Tua can do. If Tua is able to make the leap and jump that we drafted him as 5th overall a couple of years ago, the Tyreek Hill trade could work out amazing. We could literally just kill the offseason in terms of a great overall. And I think it comes down to what Tua is able to do. And you gave him protection, you gave him weapons, you gave him a run game that can do things. And I think we'll come down to Tua at the end of the day. If Tua is able to play better than what we've seen out of him, help the team make the playoffs, I think at the end of the season, you're going to say Miami got an A. They killed the offseason. They got the weapons and the pieces to make this team become a playoff team. If Tua doesn't do it, then you could say we might have paid up too much to bring in Tyreek Hill, who's a little bit older already, and Terrell Armstead, who's also a little bit older as well. So it really comes down to the quarterback situation.
Yeah, and I tend to agree with that. My biggest concern is Tua, but as I'll show here, Tua actually, he does have his supporters, but Tua had some really good finishes last season. He had that QB1 finish. Obviously the first 2 weeks were kind of rough. You had one, then you had back-to-back weeks inside the top 12. We're kind of trying to avoid the back half here. If we can get that upside that he had in the middle of the pack last year, week 7, then things are going to be fine. Now, my concern also lies in the fact that they didn't start the season great, but man, Flores was just such a good coach that it's tough to lose a guy like Brian Flores and then immediately put on the new coach that, hey, you're going to make the playoffs. So I do have some fears about the expectations being put on such a young coach. But, by all measure, I've watched the interviews and stuff, and he seems like a good enough guy. It's pretty funny. I enjoy watching it. So I'm hoping, as a Bills fan, I hope you guys don't surpass us, but it would be nice to kind of have some seeing the Dolphins in the division also making those games interesting for sure. How do you see the backfield working out there? You got Sony Michel, you got Chase Edmonds. Are you taking the late round flyer on Michel, or are you going to pay up to get, Chase Edmonds?
If I had to pick between the one, I'm definitely taking the flyer in that 14 to 16 range or 13 to 16 range or wherever he's going at the exact moment. And Sony Michel, it just makes a ton more sense. I mean, Chase Edmonds, I like the signing. I think he's a good pass catching back here, and he's flashed at times, but he hasn't been a guy who's been able to stay healthy for an entire season. And I don't know if he can actually physically handle that bigger workload overall. Sony Michel, he dealt with injuries early on in his career, but he really showed last year that he can handle a heavier workload with the Rams last year. And he did really well overall. I mean, he was someone that they used in goal line situation. He caught balls in the backfield there. I mean, I think before he was with the Rams, I think we were all joking that like Sony Michel had like 7. It was like a very minimal pass catching role and in the offense. But I think he showed us this past year that he has that ability. So taking a shot on a guy like that, and I think we saw that a lot in last year's fantasy drafts, that taking the lower tier guys end up working a lot for portions of the fantasy season. So for me, I'd rather have Sony Michel because he presents that possibility of a 3 down back if Miami chooses to go down that route at some point.
Yeah, for sure. I can understand that point. I think I like Sony Michel a lot more in best ball than I do in redraft. In redraft, I kind of lean Edmonds. Just I think that Edmonds has never had the starting role, but I also feel like things we've learned from the history in my San Francisco is that you don't necessarily need to fit a certain box to be a star in that offense. They just look for the guy that make the right cuts and make the right, find the hole and hit the hole, and that's all they got to do. So the fear would be is paying up for him and then him having him, share a committee. Because the worst thing you can do in fantasy, I've found, is to draft a running back that just gets stuck in a committee. I mean, it's the worst. They don't. Very rarely does it end up where you have a guy get injured and he ends up being a superstar. It does happen, but more often than not, like we said, it's a lot better to have the backup there than it seems to be the starter at certain times in the season. Staying in Miami, though, another question I have is if you're drafting Tyreek Hill or Jalen Waddle in Dynasty, would you pay up if you're a contender? Would you pay up for Tyreek, or would you keep Waddle?
I would
Like,
just keep. I would keep Waddle. Are you saying is like if I have Waddle, but I could trade to get Tyreek Hill instead?
let me rephrase that. Say that you were looking to make a move to get a wide receiver for this season. Would you go get Tyreek with the proven track record, or would you go get in a dynasty move to go get Waddle?
I think it would come down to me the cost. I don't think either one is much. I have them very similar in my rankings overall. I don't really have them too far apart because I think at this point of their careers, you have Tyreek Hill, who we all loved for a long time, but again, he's attached to two, and we don't know what that is capable of yet. And again, he is older. I believe he's 27 at this point of his career. At this point, so in Dynasty, this is when at some point soon he's going. Will the speed fall apart? Well, Waddle is fresh 23 still, if I'm not mistaken. We've seen that connection with him and Tua already. We've seen what that can produce on the fantasy feud together. So I'd rather just take the shot on that. But again, if someone's outrageously trying to sell me Jalen Waddle right now, but I could get Tyreek Hill on the discount in terms of his overall value, I would go that way. So it really depends on what the value is. But straight up, and if it's the same deal, I'd probably just go Waddle because I think Waddle still has a really good season and he still has that longevity overall.
Gotcha. Yeah, I'm kind of at the point where I do have Tyreek, and I like Tyreek, but I think Waddle's the value play here. And I think if you're going to try and get Waddle, I think the time's going to be to do it is during the season, and that's because I don't know if I feel like in watching all the offseason videos, they're kind of hyping up this Tyreek Hill thing, and I feel like he's obviously going to be the focal point of that offense. And I think owners are going to start to get panicked and have him not be a major part of that offense, which I think is eventually by midseason going to wear people down to trade him for less than he probably should be going for, is what I hope.
I could
But
see that happen.
that's I get in. That's just a high level thinking there. I don't know, but I lean with you also. I think Waddle is a better value overall, and I think he's going to be a target hog still eventually. And if this Tua thing goes south, the best thing that you can do if you own any of these receivers is they're going to be drafting it. If things don't go well with Tua, they're going to probably have a high draft pick next year. And then you're going to get, a CJ Stroud in there just next season who also could immediately lift up that offense and make those receivers valuable again. So
Great.
ways to handle it if the season goes south. Next up, I'm going to go with the New York Jets. They've kind of had a disappointing offseason. You get the rumors that you're going to get Tyreek Hill, and then he ends up choosing the Dolphins over you. It can kind of spurn Jets fans a little bit. And then they had the draft, but they haven't really made. They signed Jermaine Johnson, Ahmad Gardner. They signed Sauce Gardner. They got him first round, and then they also got Garrett Wilson to come in there and help out Zach Wilson. So really, a lot of the moves they've made this offseason have really been centered around the draft. And kind of give me your rundown. Are you excited about this offense? Is Zach Wilson going to take the next step? Or if you have Zach Wilson, are you actually looking to trade him now while he still has perceived value in the market?
I mean, in fantasy, I'm really hoping Zach Wilson does take that next step. Again, I was really high on him, coming into last year's draft. I was one of the few people I feel like that really, really liked Zach Wilson. And again, season didn't go well last year for him, but the Jets did put weapons around him. It wasn't the weapons I wish they would have. They would have put Tyreek Tyreek Hill around him, I would have loved that for Zach Wilson. Would have loved that for Zach Wilson because Zach Wilson does, I think, have an arm cannon that I really like overall. They built a lot of young pieces around him, and again, we don't know exactly what's going to happen with that. You know, you get a stability at tight end, which is nice. You get an elite running back. You get an elite wide receiver, and those are all young guys. So I don't know if they're going to take time to really develop their development overall. That might hurt Zach Wilson's,
Yeah.
but the upside I feel like is there for its Jets offense if these guys early on can contribute and work with Zach Wilson. It could be a really big thing, or it could be something that fails really badly this year, and we'll talking about the hype again all next year instead.
Yeah, for sure. I'm kind of with you. I feel like Tyreek Hill would have made this offense immediately better. And that's why they tried making the move happen in the first place, obviously. But I'm kind of, I was a huge fan of Zach Wilson. He was my QB1 last year, actually. And I still have a lot of hope for him, but we need to see progress this season because what's going to happen is, like you said, you have all these new rookies coming in here. And the biggest problem I have with it is that should the rookies come in, he's going to kind of have to be the leader of the pack. And he didn't really demonstrate that last season. He struggled to start the season, had the injury. At one point, the Jets fans were talking about Mike White being the starting quarterback over him. But then he came back from injury and he quietly had a good season. Let's look at his finishes to end the season. So after injury, he rough start coming back, QB6. Then he finished QB8, QB26 again, and then QB15, QB4, QB18, QB31. So he's a highly volatile QB2 for me this season. I think he has the upside to be the QB1 if he grows, but like we said, it's going to kind of come down to the rookies if they can kind of adapt quickly or not. And that's going to be the struggle is the team is just so young. It kind of feels like the Jets have a dynasty team. They got Michael Carter, they got Garrett Wilson, they have Elijah Moore, they have Corey Davis, who's the most veteran on that offense. He might actually be a value this offseason. I mean, if you're going to invest, if you think Zach Wilson's going to be good next season, which of those three are you going to invest in?
I still want to have hopes for Elijah Moore overall. I loved Elijah Moore coming out of the draft last year. I like Garrett Wilson as well, but Elijah Moore going to his second season, the electric play style that he plays with at wide receiver really intrigues me, and I'm hoping they kind of use him in a better fashion because they kind of used him very sparingly early on in Zach Wilson's beginning of season. I know he started going off a little bit before he also got hurt, and he played a couple games with Zach Wilson and was productive. I'd love to see that. I do agree with you that Corey Davis is also a value pick right now because they were hyping up Corey Davis a lot in training camp. Him and Zach Wilson had a really good chemistry, and then Corey Davis got hurt, and then Zach Wilson got hurt. If I'm not mistaken, Zach Wilson only played with his starting three wide receivers like less than 3 times.
Yeah,
all 3 at the same time on the field. So
yeah, and as the season ended, he did start to break out. It's tough to like put all that on that dude because, you start out rough here. He probably played, sooner than he should have, in all honesty. I mean, when you finish as QB 33 in a league that starts 32 quarterbacks, that's not a good sign. But yeah, I'm with you. I think, like I said, we both agree that Corey Davis is kind of a value. I mean, what do you see happening in the Jets? What does the Jets have to do in order to secure Zach Wilson being the QB1 for 2023?
like a QB1 in fantasy?
No, just in 2023 for him to still be the starter for the Jets.
He needs to just not completely shit the bed overall. I think that he'll still be the starter next year. It would be I would be shocked if unless he has a truly terrible season. To the fact that he's throwing under 3,000 yards, he's got way more picks and interceptions. The team goes like 2-7, 2-4, 2-15. I think that'd be the only way me personally would believe that Zach Wilson would not be the starter next year, just because they spent such a high draft capital on him that they wouldn't give him another season at least. I feel like you have to give the kid at least 3 years, and then after that you have to move on. Unfortunately, this is a really good draft that you might want to grab a quarterback in, but we said that a couple years ago as well. I think that he should do mildly decent. Again, it could be better, but I can't see him doing as bad as he was able to do last year.
Yeah, for sure. I'm with you, but I have. So I know Z asked on his Twitter think it was like a month ago or a couple months ago. Like, what do you need? He asked, on his Twitter, what do you need Zach Wilson to be the starter again next season? What do you need to see? And at first, I said you need to see growth. But the more I think about it, yeah, they invested a top pick in him, and the draft class next year is really good. But as we've seen the trend in the NFL grow each offseason, these QBs keep shuffling, and so I wouldn't be shocked in a world where, say, next offseason comes and Aaron Rodgers retires, or the Falcons go like 6-10 and they finish two. They win enough games that they're not at the top of the position. Like, you could start seeing things happen where they trade away Zach Wilson, or they trade. Yeah, well, I guess what I'm getting at is they could easily trade for a veteran next offseason. It might not even be someone in the draft. As we
Right.
saw this offseason, the regime tried making that trade for Tyreek Hill. So they're very into veterans as well. It just so happened that with Hill going to the Dolphins, they kind of just, unfortunately, I'll use the term, settled with Wilson. Even though I think Wilson was my wide receiver one heading into the draft, him and Pickens were really high on my list. So if that happens, I think, like I said, we need to see growth, but I, I almost wonder if they need to be in the playoff race come Thanksgiving. Like, it needs to be late in the season where they're still in the playoff race, kind of like the year where they had Ryan Fitzpatrick for me, in order for him to guarantee that he's the starter next season. Whether that's him, having 3,000, 4,000 yards and being the guy that keeps him in games, or whether he's just a game manager that hands the ball off to, Michael Carter and, the running backs back there, obviously Brees Hall and Michael Carter. But yeah, for sure. That's kind of what I'm leaning towards. Are there any are there any values right now other than Corey Davis in this offense? Are you buying into Michael Carter as a running back too with a sneaky upside, or are you just all in on Brees Hall? Or how do you see that working if you're looking at Jets players? Are you targeting running backs at all? Are you going to avoid their wide receivers? Or are you going the other way and you're going to take the receivers and avoid the running backs?
Um, I would rather take the running backs because I don't know. I like all three wide receivers. I really don't know what Zach Wilson's going to do, and I think they're
Yeah.
they're going to try to establish the run game. They have roots from the Kyle Shanahan offense where it's important to run the ball. We saw last year they did at times really want to run the ball, but they just didn't have the talent at running back to do that. Now you move Michael Carter to more of a complement role, which perhaps that maybe makes his efficiency better, and you let Brees Hall take the grunt of the work there early on the offense there. I might want to go that direction overall. Again, I like the wide receivers, but if I had to pick between the two, I'd probably go the running backs. I think they're going to see at least the workload, and they're going to try to attempt to run the ball as much as possible, I think. And again, the wide receivers could be a carousel. But before I let you go back, I just wanted to mention real quick. I looked at the Jets' first 9 games there, and it's tough. Honestly, it's
Yeah.
the not the Panth. That's last year. It's the Ravens, the Browns, the Bengals, the Steelers, the Dolphins, the Packers, the Broncos, the Patriots, and the Bills. It doesn't really bode well for them to get more than maybe 2 games wins out of that stretch.
Yeah. And that's actually a good point you make, because that makes things even harder for Zach Wilson. If you start 2-5, you know, 1-6, that's a rough start to come back from, and then that just puts you further in that quarterback hole as well. So it's an interesting point you make. Ravens, I think, are going to be, as always, they're going to be the Ravens this season. The Bills defense is going to get better. So I'm fully with you. That schedule is daunting, especially for this offense.
They
I
may
think I
be
find myself leaning towards no Jets players this season, personally.
That's probably the best way. If you are going to go after some Jets players, I think you're better off going for some midseason trades because they do get like the Lions, the Jags, the Seahawks. Maybe you count the Dolphins in there. I believe the Bears, they play in the second half of the season. So there's some more favorable matchups that they might end up seeing a late season, success.
Yeah, for sure. So that's going to lead us to the final team in the AFC East, the Darth Sidious of the league, the New England Patriots. They have had a quiet offseason, to say the least. Haven't really, I, I struggle to name, big moves that they've done this offseason. They've kind of been the quiet ones. So the big thing here has been the draft for them. What do you make of the things they've done? I mean, the biggest news right now seems to be who's going to be calling their plays, and it's got to be like a joke that I'm reading that Matt Patricia's the favorite to be the play caller. I mean, I literally looked at that and was like, I don't know what's going on.
To be honest, I have literally no idea what the Patriots are doing here. Their offseason was kind of weird. They traded for Devontae Parker. That might have been like a highlight for them. Their draft seemed to really, again, continue to grab,
Strange
more
players.
strange players, a lot of running backs. They already have a loaded backfield. I don't think they really got anyone on the defensive side that really made a major impact. And again, like you said, the play calling. I mean, how do you not bring an offensive mind in to call plays if Bill's not calling them? So like, it's weird what they're doing this offseason.
Yeah. Is there anyone? I mean, let's be honest. I kind of get the sense that this is like a make or break season for Bill. And I know that's kind of my hot take. I feel like we're at the point now where since Brady's left, this team, they had a terrible year 2 years ago. Last season, they made the playoffs. They got embarrassed in the playoffs. I almost wonder if last season there was more of a product of the schedule they played. Coaching can get you out of holes, but I don't think the Patriots really belonged in the playoffs. I think they were going to get stomped by whoever they played. What do you would it be what are your thoughts on me saying that I think this is a make or break year for me? If the Patriots win, if they win 6 games, we'll say, you think he just retires, or do you think he comes back next season to prove people that that Tom Brady didn't make him?
I wouldn't be shocked if he retired, but I feel like Bill wants to prove that he is part of the reason why Brady was so successful. Obviously, Brady himself was, and we've seen it after the Patriots that he's been very successful. But I hate to say good things about the Patriots, but again, they went to a season where they lose Tom and didn't really have a backup plan set up. They didn't really have that insurance. I really do believe they didn't think they were going to trade Tom Brady, and it kind of came to a shock that when they did for them, or not sign him, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
And I kind of think they kind of struggled. And then you bring in Mac Jones, who kind of is that facilitator, someone who can move the ball downfield, but isn't going to help you win games. And I think they're trying to build not around him in the highlight way we've seen like the Dolphins and the Jets do, but more in a way where they just bring in people who they fits their system really, really well. And that's it. And I don't know. I really have no idea what Bill's going to do, but I think he does come back next year, even if they were to go like 6 and like 11 or whatever it is now.
Yeah. I always get hung up on that 17th game. Yeah, I mean, I could see it. I guess to me, it just feels like you show up to class without a textbook when you name Matt Patricia, who's historically called defensive plays, as an offensive coordinator. Now I feel like he's just trying to show us that he's a genius. And he's kind of working too hard. I don't see it. I think this is going to be, I was talking to my buddy last week, and he thinks it's like, I wouldn't write off the Patriots just yet offensively. And I'm like, I said I didn't want any Jets players, but I can honestly say I legitimately want no New England player on my roster. Mac Jones has the upside to be QB2, which is great, but like a solid QB2, not like the QB2. Like he'll probably finish in QB2 numbers, but it's difficult for me to do that. I guess if you had to pick a player on this team, who would you feel comfortable with riding into this season with slated in pen as your weekly starter?
Oof, that is a
We'll,
difficult question, honestly.
we'll say super flex tight end premium.
I guess I would go back to Hunter Henry, honestly. Like I said, the run game with Damian Harris sounds interesting, but I don't know if Damian Harris is going to put up 10 plus touchdowns again this season.
Yeah.
With James White back, Ramondre Stevenson hopefully out of the doghouse for real now and getting work. The wide receiver core is just, there was no real favorite. At some point we were starting Kendrick Bourne as our favorite Patriots wide receiver. just not what we want in fantasy. I mean, Devontae Parker hasn't been able to stay healthy. Jacoby Myers is just a solid guy. He's not really a superstar. Maybe he can still be a guy, but when the Patriots get down to that red zone, it seemed like every single time Mac Jones will look for Hunter Henry. And I know touchdown, regression is there, but he's a really good player that I think a lot of people overlooked when Jonnu Smith signed there, even though he had the bigger money. Hunter Henry has been solid, a guy who can get you 6 or 7 touchdowns in almost any season, get you 500 yards. So,
and it's to your point, it's not just Mac Jones. I mean, he put up numbers with Phillip Rivers. He's always been a playmaker. For me,
Right.
it's always been about his health, really, more so than the production that he puts up. He seems to not last normally, but I'm with you. Hunter Henry is definitely on the list. Um, it's funny you mentioned Kendrick Bourne because last season I had Jonathan Taylor, but my wide receiver three was a constant battle between Kendrick Bourne and AJ Green. I didn't make it to the finals, but I got darn close because of Jonathan Taylor and Joe Mixon for me, who I bought last offseason. But yeah,
Nice.
if I'm looking at this offense, I I don't know. I mean, I'm with you. It's going to have to be Hunter Henry because I just don't trust any other piece. Now, if you were in a startup, which running back are you buying here? I mean, you got Damian Harris, final year of his deal, I want to say, if I'm not mistaken.
Yes.
And then you've got the other two running backs. It seems like they're just drafting running backs every offseason lately.
Can I use the rookies in this
Yeah.
conversation?
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
If the rookies are included into a startup, I probably would just take a late round flyer on like Pierre Strong. Honestly, I think Damian Harris doesn't come back next year. I really don't think they're going to want to sign Damian. I'd be shocked if they bring him back. It would be the total Patriot thing to do, but I really don't believe they bring him back. I think Ramondre Stevenson showed that he could handle a bigger workload there, and I like him as well. But I feel like the coaching staff doesn't trust him fully enough to really take over all the work. I know he's been
Yeah.
working on this pass catching game this offseason, but Pierre Strong has that pass catching ability, and we've seen it time and time again that the Patriots do like to have their pass catching back, or at least Tom Brady did, and I think Mac Jones did decent enough last year that Pierre Strong could see an impact. So in the value you're getting him probably in the later rounds of a startup, I'd rather go that direction if I had to pick one.
Awesome. Yeah. No, I'm with you. I would lean Pierre Strong. Is it really a bad thing though if they don't if they don't re-sign Harris? I mean, part of me wonders. I'll look it up here in a second, but I don't know how long that Darrell Williams signed in Arizona, but he seems like he'd be a legitimate fit for that system next offseason. James Conner doesn't really seem to stay healthy, and I think that he could actually kind of mix in well with that scheme, assuming obviously that Cliff Kingsbury still is employed and they're running the same scheme and stuff like that. So it's a little bit tough to predict years out, but I do like Damian Harris, and his cost is significantly lower based on the production he put out last season. So I wouldn't mind taking the shot at him if you can get him later in the draft. I definitely wouldn't pay top 4 picks for him, but if you can get him on like a fifth or sixth, might be a decent value if you're going zero running back as well.
Definitely. I mean, the only thing that concerns me is that we've seen it seems like a lot of once these 1 year contracts are done, and if you haven't been like a superstar level, that teams kind of wait on you and wait until after the draft. So the only thing that does scare me. He's still young enough where he could possibly get a good contract, maybe, but it seems
Yeah.
like now, especially after this offseason, a lot of running backs doesn't seem to sign until later on. So
Yeah, reminds me of last season. James Conner had not signed anywhere, and
right.
so I think I got him for like someone was trying to sell him for anything, and I got him for a third round pick, and then he goes to Arizona, and then like you said, he breaks out, and then he signs that nice new deal, but he hasn't stayed healthy, so it's kind of funny how that position normally goes. So just the last 15 minutes, now that we've kind of broken down the AFC East, I kind of want to just dive into your brain for the next 15 minutes over General Dynasty.
Sure.
We actually were in a draft together. You want
Yes,
to
we
tell
are.
us about the league that we kind of started and kind of your thoughts on it so far and how the startup went?
Um, I definitely wish I went different direction a little bit. Honestly, it was a tough. It's basically like a multiversal league here kind of thing where
Hmm.
each year the roster settings and the scoring all changes. This year it's a 2 QB, 2 tight end premium, 2 RBs, 3 wide receivers, no flexes. And next year it goes into a 5 wide receiver, 1 quarterback, 1 tight end, and 2 running backs, and I think a flex or something like that, whatever it may be. Uh, it definitely, I catered to more this year, and I feel like I should have kind of catered a little bit more to next year. And I feel like next year I'm going to be struggling, especially at wide receiver a little bit there. And I went
Yeah.
tight end, 2 tight ends really early, where I probably should have maybe just waited until like to get Cameron Brate and just called it my tight end two this year and dealt with the situation.
It's funny you mentioned Cameron Braid. I'm actually kind of in on Cameron Braid based on the fact that Gronk isn't back. Like Gronk's probably going to play,
Probably.
but Cameron Braid's been good for so long that I kind of feel like he's kind of a value in a two tight end league, like you said. So I don't mind that thought at all. Overall, I thought it was, I thought you did fine. The thing about this type of league is that I think that it is interesting because the rosters are going to change. People are going to be always constantly jockeying for trades, and so while you might be hurting for a receiver next year, someone else is going to be trying to tear their team down, playing for the year after that, where you can probably get a receiver cheaper than you normally would. So it'll be interesting to see kind of how that all shakes out over the course of time. It's a fun concept, and I'm excited that you kind of started up, and it'll be super cool. So my draft went kind of well. I got the two quarterbacks I needed. I actually went the opposite. I got tight ends late. I'm
Yeah,
very
you
big
did. Yeah.
into, yeah, I got very big into Evan Ingram as being a sleeper this year. I've been burned by him before, but what are your thoughts on Evan Ingram playing for Jacksonville? It seems as though my thought process kind of led me back to Doug Peterson using Goddard and Ertz in his time in Philadelphia, and the fact that I know they just shelled out big money for a wide receiver too, but I just feel like Ingram is still cheap because he burned people last year.
Yeah, I think he has an opportunity for that sleeper status for sure this year. Again, we haven't really seen him be that overly productive since his
Yeah.
rookie year. He's kind of declined. But in this situation, we know Doug Peterson does have that history with tight ends. Trevor Lawrence did make some of his tight ends kind of relevant. I know the Dan Arnold was a thing for a little bit. James O'Shaughnessy was a thing for a little bit. Like some of these tight ends had some decent weeks. I think Evan Ingram has more athleticism than any of these guys. So it will be interesting to see if he becomes the 2 or 3 top pass catcher on this team because it's potentially there. Again, a good later round value pick or a great buy low candidate if you can. I think I don't know how high people really are on Evan Ingram. I'm not overly high on him, but if you can get him for the cheap,
Yeah.
especially in Dynasty, I would.
Now, would you rather trade for Evan Ingram or Zach Ertz? If you're a contender, would you rather try and chase the production and keep your first next, or not even a first? Zach Ertz isn't going for a first, but if you were, who are you leaning towards if you're going to give up a second round pick?
If I'm giving up a second round pick, I'd still probably go Zach Ertz. Again, he did sign that deal, but again, they also drafted a tight end, so I don't know if they're going to keep him. I don't know if the contract gives him an out after this year or 2 years, whatever it may be. But if I'm going for a championship right now, the way I see it is that Kyle Murray, high power offense, the more likely opportunity that they're going to score over Jacksonville is going to score is definitely there. And especially with Hopkins missing the first 6 games, you're going to get that early on production with Zach Ertz that you've known and loved for almost a decade now, where Evan Ingram, we're still chasing that rookie season and we're hoping that he can kind of come back to life in Jacksonville.
Yeah, for sure. And then you also have that chemistry last season carrying over for the Cardinals with Murray and Ertz as well. So is there anyone that you're actively trading for or looking for in terms of trades right now, or any trades that you've done this offseason that you want to talk about?
I've been actively still trying to trade for Cole Kmet. Honestly, I've been trying to trade for Cole Kmet every which way. The Bears starting tight end, Cole Kmet last year. Last year, Cole Kmet just got so unlucky. I mean, he was someone who I think it was like top 5 in red zone targets for tight ends, someone who had good yardage, and he just didn't score last year. He didn't score once last year, and I just feel like that can't happen 2 years in a row with a guy like Cole Kmet, who's really talented. He was the number 1 tight end off the board 2 years ago in the draft, and without a second pass catcher really in Chicago outside of Darrell Mooney, I feel like Cole Kmet has to see close to 100 targets this year. And from 0 to maybe 4 or 5, that puts you probably in that middle tier tight end 1 scenario if he can at least replicate the production he saw last year, but get those touchdowns now. So for me, Cole Kmet is someone I've been actively trying to trade for.
That's interesting. Yep. I understand, and you're not alone in that Cole Kmet thing. I was actually on the Cole Kmet train last season. He kind of burned me this season. I know that I should probably be, holding my hopes out for him, but I just find myself more enamored with Evan Ingram than I am Cole Kmet this season, which is kind of odd because really when you think about it, Cole Kmet is entering an offense without an established wide receiver one. Darnell Mooney, I think, fits more the peg of a wide receiver two in that offense. They have that rookie receiver they drafted, Velus Jones, out of Tennessee. The targets are going to be there. He's going to get his in this offense. So it's an interesting point. I've I'm kind of talking myself back in on him, and so of you, I kind of like the points you made. Didn't score any touchdowns. It can't possibly end that way. It's going to kind of depend for me on Justin Fields, and I'm in the minority. I am not the biggest Justin Fields believer. I didn't see anything that Pittsburgh game, I was impressed. But outside of that Pittsburgh game, there was some moments that you saw, okay, there is QB1 upside there. But I hate chasing the upside with the cost that he's currently going for me.
No, I definitely get that. I don't like sometimes chasing. I feel like people chase these rushing quarterbacks and
Yeah.
don't really focus on their passing game because they're like, oh well, Josh Allen did it. Josh Allen did it early on in his career. Anyone can do it.
Yeah.
And like guys like Fields and even Trey Lance to me to an extent,
Absolutely.
people
Absolutely
are
Trey
rushing
Lance.
for that rushing upside. They're like, oh, they're gonna get 1,000-yard rusher. They're gonna be like Lamar Jackson, and I feel like people are doing that with both Fields and Lance right now, which again, they might turn out to be really good, but they also that passing ability that they, especially Trey Lance, a little bit is still a little like questionable
Yeah.
overall.
I
So
mean,
I get
Trey
your feel on
Lance,
that.
like Trey Lance, every time I watch him, he's throwing like 100-mile-an-hour fastball. I mean, he's got to find a way to take some heat off those throws and put the ball where it needs to be and throw a catchable ball to his receivers. Yeah, I'm with you. Those first three picks, I feel like, are so crucial for any dynasty draft that if you miss out on those first three picks, I have a buddy who drafted, it was the first pick a couple years ago. It was probably my third year in dynasty, and so sorry, it's just funny. His first pick was actually on Johnson, and it just derailed him and so badly for the next couple of years when you miss out on a pick like that. That was the season where the footballers were super high on him. He had so much hype, and then he just completely fell off the planet. So
Right.
it is interesting. I actually find myself, as I've been looking through the stats today, um, I have not seen an RB1 repeat since LaDainian Tomlinson has. So the stats are definitely not on Jonathan Taylor's side. It seems like every season, RB1 drops somewhere around RB8 or worse, depending on their usage rates. So if you were sitting here today and saying, I'm going to get rid of Jonathan Taylor because I don't like historically what that position has done to the player, who would you be investing in at the position? Who would you say you're trading down for and trying to recoup some extra picks and draft capital, or maybe do like a 3-for-1 or a 2-for-1 trade?
Oh, that's definitely a tough one there. For me, I would still want to. If I'm trying to collect a lot of picks, a lot of players, you might have to
Hmm.
go lower on the running back. Because if I was going to get rid of Jonathan Taylor, I would try to get like Najee Harris and a pick or two. And people might not want to, give up Najee Harris. Like they might value him over too much that you might not get the buttload that you might want out of him.
Yeah, for sure.
Again, I would try to see if you get at least 2 first-round picks. Try to get 2 first-round picks in next year's 23 draft.
Yeah.
Try to get one of the running backs like Brees Hall or even I love Kenneth Walker, even Kenneth Walker, and then just a couple other running backs or whatever position you might need. Um, like try to get like if you could buy low on like Devonta Smith now or Elijah Moore and another wide receiver potentially to try to get everything for Jonathan Taylor, I would go in that direction there to see if someone wants to bite. Again, it just really depends on what people value in that situation there, but I would at least try to get at least 3 potential upside star players back for him.
Yeah, for sure. I understand that. I find myself enamored with Saquon Barkley again, which is funny because the whole start of the exercise was, RB1 finishers actually they don't tend to really get back there that often throughout their careers, which is kind of fascinating to me. So Saquon Barkley had his rookie season RB1 and hasn't really broached that topic since. I'm enamored with that offense, so I wouldn't mind going down from like Barkley to collect a couple, a 1 and a 2 in next year's draft class. Hopefully 2 1s. It kind of depends. I feel like Saquon's market is very different at micro levels. Like generally, I get a sense that most players, their prices are pretty consistent, but Saquon, it's like one person can value Saquon just as high as he did his rookie season, and the other, the ones that owned him last season might be trying to just run for the hills. It's kind of an interesting microcosm of what people are looking at in terms of Saquon Barkley. What are your thoughts?
Uh, I've been actively just trying to stay away from him. Honestly, I I get there's upside. There's definitely upside there. Honestly, if you're looking for an upside player to get the buy into, it's definitely Barkley because I think the upside is still there, but the risk factor for me personally with the injuries and the offense overall, I don't think the line is that great, and I don't know if
Yeah,
this team that we've talked about teams about going for teams that have upside ability to score touchdowns. I don't know if the Giants have that upside. They got the new play caller and the head coach, but I just don't know if Daniel Jones is the guy to get them to be able to score two or three, get in the red zone like 5 or 6 times a game. I just don't see that as a possibility for them consistently. So I don't, unless Saquon Barkley is going to break up a bunch of runs this year, I just don't see him being RB1 status once again, personally.
yeah. Now, do you think he could get there with receptions? I mean, there's the OTA report, which OTA reports are really just confirmation biases, right? But there's the report that he's getting all the pass catching work at OTAs. Does that make you any more optimistic, or call him BS on that kind of?
I mean, you can say what you want to do for an offense. Yeah, I want to get the running backs more involved, but at the end of the day, I think it comes down to during the game what happens with Daniel Jones, and if they might call a few more run plays or pass plays to the running backs, but in the end of the day, Daniel Jones, I feel like if he's getting pressured, he probably won't look off quick enough to either dump it off to Saquon or he's gonna just run it or fortunately get sacked probably more times than not. So for me, I love the hype for it, but I just don't know if it's ever going to come to fruition during the season.
Yeah, for sure. That's an interesting point, and I actually tend to, I go back and forth. I think he could be back to his elite self, but as a Bills fan, ironically, I don't think Daboll is the best play caller. I think he's a really good teacher. I think he definitely helped Josh Allen grow, but I'm not enamored with his play calling. I think it gets questionable at times for sure. So that's always a big thing for me. But I think, if you look at Daboll's history, he did make 1,000-yard rushers out of Peyton Hillis, and then he also made Reggie Bush, as you remember, as again that Dolphins logo in the back. He was the offensive coordinator back there in Miami when Reggie Bush kind of got on the map, kind
Yeah,
of underwhelmed there in New Orleans for a while, from my recollection. But it seemed like he did really well in Miami. So
he
those are
did.
the that's the optimistic view in me, is that Peyton Hillis didn't do anything after him, so if you can make Peyton Hillis good, maybe you can bring back Saquon Barkley. But we're getting down to the wire, so I actually wanted you to just take out a minute, tell us what you're working on. I know that we both write for the Nerds, and you got your own coaches podcast, and where everyone can find you in your work.
Yeah, definitely, guys. So you can follow me over on Twitter at Coach Stephen P. Like Justin said, me and him both work for Dynasty Nerds, and I do my articles on there at times, whatnot. I think I just wrote one about Hollywood Brown and Arizona. And then for my other things that I do here, I am the host of the Fantasy Coaches podcast. We kind of mixture of redraft and dynasty here. We go every Mondays and Thursdays during the season here, just Mondays in the off season. And I actually just started a new segment, actually, real quick. A couple hours before I joined on with you, it's just a little short 10-minute episodes about Dynasty. And I plan on going through a whole entire breakdown of the Dynasty landscape and everything in between what you need to know for how to play Dynasty, league settings, different types of things like that here. So you can check that out over at Coaches Fantasy on Twitter at any time. So
Yeah,
appreciate
for
you letting
sure.
me jump on.
Oh yeah, no, we're happy to have you. Sorry that things started a little bit earlier than, so I appreciate having you. I'm very happy you joined. But I will say I did watch your 10-minute segment. I thought it was cool, and
Thank you.
also happy to be. I think you're also the commissioner of a lot of leagues, and you have a lot of interesting ideas. So if you're ever looking for new ideas, you should definitely give him a follow on Twitter. He's always brewing up some cool ideas with us at the Nerds, so it's always a good conversation to have too. But
I
again,
appreciate that.
appreciate you having, man. So thanks for hopping on, and always fun talking ball.
Absolutely.
Right.